Welcome back. All right, so I wanted to do something different today. Now, Wednesdays, when we get into the regular season, every second Wednesday is Panic Index Day. And obviously, I'm not going to do a panic index before the season starts, but I wanted to talk about the reputations teams seem to have online. This might be fans, this might be media, this might just be general feeling around a team. But you have champs, chokers, teams that are up and coming, the ones we're not sure what they are, the ones that are rebuilding, but there's optimism that they're going to come out of it or they're doing well with it. And then there's the endless frustration at the bottom. So it's similar in the way that I've structured this to a panic index. And obviously for the champs part, that's easy. The champs part is very much an easy one. Hardest part's just getting the magnet off the board, but Florida. And because Florida's won the last two Stanley Cups, now everybody talks about how fantastically run the organization is, how great they are. And I'm not disagreeing with it. The funny thing is, 5 years ago, the perception was Florida needs to move. They're not any good. This organization is never going to succeed. And on and on and on. So perceptions change. And I would say that with Florida, other teams need to emulate some things with the team. But I think the forechecking, the work ethic, the fact that every member of the team is pulling in the same direction, those are the things to look at with the Florida Panthers, and I do think we'll see some of that. We'll see some teams focusing a little more on forechecking, and obviously puck control. The Florida Panthers excellent with puck control, very dominant. It's difficult to recreate that. So now we'll go through, and I'll just grab. I don't think I need the NHL magnet for this one. The NHL is just the entire league, right? So we'll start with the Rangers. The Rangers, I'm going to put them under the question mark because there are some who are expecting them to get better this year. There are some expecting them to jump back into the playoffs. I'm one of them. But could they stay outside the playoff picture? Sure. So I put them under question mark. Winnipeg right now has a reputation for being chokers. And some of that is going to be from Hellebuck. And Hellebuck's numbers being poor come playoff time. And I'm not going to disagree that Hellebuck needs to be better in the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets, of course, to shed that reputation, need to win at least 2 rounds this year. 1 round simply won't get it done. Nashville's a tough one. I feel like there's a question mark there because are they in a rebuild or not? It doesn't feel like management's approaching this necessarily as a rebuild. I think how this season starts going to decide a lot of what Barry Trotz does from here. I haven't done the GM video yet either. I know I did the coaches video a while back. I will be doing a video on GMs, which ones I feel like are the most safe in their jobs as we get ready for the new season. And it'll be a little different than the coaches list. But Nashville, I feel like there's some question marks there. Tampa, Tampa at this point, you can't really qualify them as chokers because they do have the Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021. I don't want to put another team next to question mark, but they're not really up and coming. They're not in a rebuild, and there's not endless frustration either. So, now I've already got the question marks. This is how you guys know I don't plan this ahead of time. I just go, hey, this is fun. I got all my Simpsons magnets on the board. What would Tampa be qualified as? I can't put them as chokers. You know what? I'm going to... So I'm gonna put one over here because it's not like we're gonna have another champ, right? So, all right, recent champs, still contenders with a question mark. I'll put Tampa there. Because I think Tampa's still got enough pieces from those Stanley Cup wins that I could see Tampa maybe going on a run, that kind of thing, right? Toronto. Toronto's seen as a choker in the playoffs. And I don't know how fair that is for the whole team to be seen as chokers. It kind of feels like, there we go. See, Manitoba's so much bigger than Ontario. It's not. These are not to scale. Do not use these as scale. I apologize for any children, teenagers watching who now fail geography miserably. But really, that's on Rico. It's not on me. It's Rico Industries. But yeah, Toronto definitely would qualify as a team seen as a choker. They have to get through at least 2 rounds as well, so kind of nice right next to Winnipeg. New Jersey's still got that new car smell to their team. So I will say New Jersey is still viewed as up and coming. Now, if you're a Rangers fan, you view them as chokers, is my guess. And there are other fans who are going to view them. There might be some Devils fans who view them as chokers. But I think up and coming works for the New Jersey Devils. What's interesting is it feels like with the amount of young talent that the St. Louis Blues have, up and coming qualifies for them as well. I like Dvorsky in that game last night as just one example. Obviously, Snuggerud's expected to be a future star for the team. There's a lot of good young players there. Picking up Holloway and Broberg from Edmonton seems like that was a brilliant move as well. San Jose, it's a rebuild with optimism. Yeah, there's some optimism in the air around the San Jose Sharks. At least I think so. The worst should be behind them. So there's definitely some optimism there. There you go. San Jose fans. It's been years, but there's some optimism around the San Jose Sharks. Carolina definitely has a reputation as a choker. I'm going to put Carolina right where it sits on the geography map right here. So Ontario's just below North Carolina. It is. Don't trust your textbooks. But yeah, Carolina, I would say, yeah. And I thought about qualifying this too, because obviously for Carolina, they get to the conference final, which Winnipeg and Toronto would love to make it to, but they don't win enough games in a conference final to not be viewed as chokers. So, and the only way you get over that hump is to win a Stanley Cup, right? The Oilers, I don't agree with this at all. I don't. And I want to say this is just based on what I see and what I hear a lot. The Oilers are viewed as chokers because they get to the Stanley Cup final and they've lost in back-to-back years against Florida. And the argument seems to be, well, they've just got two players and they're not very good, even though they got all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And honestly, both 2024 and 2025 easily could have gone the other way. There were a couple of games in the final this year that just, honestly, as somebody who was rooting for the Oilers to win the Cup this year, once we got to the final, it was almost heartbreaking for me. And I never thought I'd see the day I said that of a playoff loss for Edmonton. But there was that overtime game where when Florida won that, in my brain I said, okay, so Florida's winning the Stanley Cup. If Edmonton wins that game in overtime, maybe we're having a different conversation. But I totally disagree, but I know that's the because I see it. Anaheim is right next to San Jose. Rebuild with optimism. Absolutely. There are two Californias. There's actually three on the board, but there's actually two real Californias. Anaheim, there isn't. The Anaheim Ducks at this point in time, yes, very much rebuild with optimism. I'd put them here, but they haven't made the playoffs yet. And to me, to qualify as up and coming, you have to have made the playoffs at this point. Philly. I feel like Philly goes into endless frustration until things start getting a little better on the ice. It has been... It's been a while now since they made the playoffs. What, we're up to 5 years now since they made the playoffs, and I don't think they're going to be any closer this year. And there's been a lot of frustration along the way. So I'll put Philly into there. I don't feel like the rebuild with the optimism is there yet. They're working on it though. Detroit. Oh, Detroit goes next to endless frustration. Yeah. I don't think any Detroit fans can argue with that either. They need to make the playoffs. They absolutely need to make this. It needs to happen. I don't know that it is going to happen, but it needs to. This is a team that just needs some kind of positive. You need to get some playoff games for Larkin. You need to get playoff games for Yzerman's job when we talk about general managers. So, yeah, Detroit. Chicago is in that rebuild with optimism stage as well. There are a lot of good young players in Chicago, and having watched a couple of their preseason games, understanding their exhibition games, they don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but Chicago can put together a pretty good roster this year, and there's a lot of good young talent there. So the Chicago Blackhawks, there's an optimism in the air around the team we haven't seen in at least 5 years. Seattle, I have no idea what to expect from Seattle. I have no idea what they're going to do or not going to do. I don't know. I don't know what the actual direction with the team necessarily is. They started out as a not awful team, not a good enough team to make the playoffs in year two. They haven't made the playoffs since. I have no idea with Seattle. Dallas has to go into the choker category, don't they? So this is where it gets interesting to me, is that every year we see a Stanley Cup champion and then everybody says, see those guys? Do it their way. Or, well, no, they cheated. It doesn't count. It's one of the, or both. In Florida's case, you get both. You get, well, they cheated, and everybody should emulate what they've done. Oh, how do you propose that? I think my favorite thing is when people go, well, I don't know why they don't do things like Florida. Okay, educate us. How will another team do things the way Florida does things? What's the magical formula? Because I already talked in a video ages ago about Florida and how it was a combination of smart drafting, signing contracts at the right time, making good trades. If they add free agents, they usually work in pretty well to that lineup and they fit in right away. They've got really good pro scouting. So in order to emulate Florida, it really is not that simple. And I think it attests to just how well that's been put together. And it's not easy. It's not that simple. It's not that simple to say, well, don't pay Kaprizov. Just do what Florida did. How? So 20 years of nothing, 25 years between winning a round, and then finally you get a good GM and everything goes. So all right, so everybody needs to hire Bill Zito, is what I'm hearing. Let's go back to Columbus. Oh, I'm going to put Columbus next up and coming. And now, they didn't make the playoffs this past year, but they got very, very close. And there were a couple of results there that could have gone either way. It was very, very close. So I feel like for Columbus, I'm not going to put them next to Endless Frustration. Up and coming works because there's so many good young players in the Columbus lineup. So with the understanding that Anaheim fans might be like, we belong in up and coming then, Anaheim was a little further out. So I'll put Columbus next to up and coming. Colorado, recent champs, still contenders. I don't think they've lost enough for me to put them next to chokers because they won the cup in 2022. That's only 3 years ago. So the idea that, well, they've choked since then, yeah, but that's 3 years. And it's not long enough for me to say, well, they're chokers because they have won a cup recently. So there's that. Buffalo, you know what? For the Endless Frustration, I just could have put a Buffalo logo there. In fact, what I was considering doing when I was putting this together before I got the Simpsons magnet idea was to use other sports. And I was going to use the New York Jets for Endless Frustration. Or the Dallas Cowboys. I wasn't sure which one. But, Buffalo Sabres definitely end up in that Endless Frustration. I don't think any Sabres fans are going to take issue with that. We'll go with Vancouver. I don't know what to expect from Vancouver. I think there's enough parts of the Vancouver Canucks to think they could be a playoff team. And there's enough reason to think that they'll struggle to make the playoffs. If Anaheim is better and if nobody else falls back, it could be very difficult for Vancouver to make the playoffs. So Vancouver to me is one of those ones that's kind of maybe, right? So, and I'm saying this too based on what I see online. There are people who think the Canucks are going to jump back in the playoffs, and there are people that think that they won't. Calgary. They go in that question mark too, don't they? The Flames stayed in the playoff hunt way longer than anybody expected this past season. I don't think anybody has any idea what to expect from that. If Calgary went 2-10 out of the gate, okay, so they're in a rebuild, and you trade Rasmus Andersson, and you look to make changes with the future, deciding which players you're keeping or trading. But if they get off to a good start, is Craig Conroy buying? Does it all of a sudden become a situation where Anderson's like, hey, I have a chance to win. Maybe I can win here. And maybe he sticks around. So, yeah, Calgary's kind of up in the air. Montreal, definitely up and coming. Montreal, Calder winner with Hudson. Demidov, very likely to end up being at the top of the Calder list this year, barring somebody else coming out of nowhere and being very, very good. And that does happen with Calder trophies. But Montreal's definitely in that up-and-coming category. And I do think that their best days are definitely ahead of them. Pittsburgh, I can't qualify them as Endless Frustration. I can't really say rebuild with optimism because I don't know. I don't know that I'd have the optimism part because they don't have the young stars that comes with that optimism. They're not Stanley Cup champions recently enough for me to say recent champs. 2017's too far back. So to me, the question marks work. I think that's the best spot for him because we don't really know. And there's a lot we don't know about the future. All the speculation around Malkin and Crosby, which I still think it's all just smoke and mirrors. I don't think there's anything behind it because both players have said they want to stick around. Malkin a little bit more open to talking about maybe leaving Pittsburgh just because he's in the final year of his contract. But yeah, Pittsburgh to me is in that question mark. I can't put them under endless frustration. They haven't been out of the playoffs that long. Vegas, recent champs. I think still contenders. They're my Stanley Cup pick for this year. So we know they're not going to win it because I picked them for the Stanley Cup. And if that's the Stanley Cup winner I end up hitting, if that's the hit I get, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that one, to be honest. But yeah, because that means that they've probably gone through at least one or two teams that I really like to get there. But yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights, recent champs, absolutely 2023, and they might be the one team that could in a final if we go there and if it's Florida and Vegas. They're the one team that might be able to match up and have that work ethic. And Cassidy against Maurice, the coaching would be next level. Washington, not a rebuild. I don't know. I don't know if I can qualify them as up and coming. I don't think I'd put them as chokers either. Although they've won. So they won a round this year. That's the first round they've won in ages. So, like since they won the Cup in 2018, which is not recent enough for me to have them as recent Stanley Cup champions, since I didn't put St. Louis as a recent Stanley Cup champion. So that column is done. I'm on the fence with Washington as to where to put them. It's definitely not endless frustration. I don't need another category, do I? You know what? I'm going to chicken out. I'm going to put them next to the question mark because they did win the conference. They were number one in the regular season. The weaknesses in the team I thought showed up against Carolina in that second round. And so this year I think is really up in the air. If Washington can keep the shot suppression going, which they have during the preseason, if they can keep that into the regular season, maybe they end up being at the top of the division again. But I'm going to put them as a question mark at this point in time. Utah is definitely up and coming. Utah is the one map I do not have in NHL logos. I check for it every other day. So Rico Industries, if you're watching, could use a Utah map. But anyways, yeah, the Utah Mammoth I think are going to be fun this year. And there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic that they could make the playoffs this year. And so I think a little bit more, yes, a little bit more than Anaheim. I will go that far. I will reference back to Anaheim where I need to. But yeah, Utah, I think up and coming, absolutely. There are some expectations that they make the playoffs this year. The LA Kings, I'm sorry, but when you lose 4 years in a row against the same team, and especially when there have been times in at least a couple of those series, including the one they had this year, where they kind of had Edmonton dead to rights, and then they didn't. And so it's kind of become an LA Kings thing that they play against Edmonton, they look good against Edmonton, and then they don't, and then they go home. So, yeah, choker's just going to have to be where I put the LA Kings at this point in time. Couldn't really put them as up and coming either. I don't feel like there's enough of the young stars there for me to give them that designation. All right, so let's do a quick count. You've got one champ, 3 recent champs, still contenders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 under chokers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 under up and coming. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 under the question mark. 3 under rebuild with optimism. 3 under endless frustration. And rolling along, Ottawa. Ottawa's up and coming. I do know that between Ottawa and Montreal, the odds of both of them keeping up their momentum, we may see one of them fall back. My guess is it'll be Montreal of the two, but it could be Ottawa as well. It's going to depend, I think, on the starts of the season because the Atlantic's really difficult. The Atlantic, I think, has become the toughest division. So while I understand that there's always going to be complaints about where teams might be in the standings according to preseason projections, the Atlantic's very, very difficult. So there could be a situation where Toronto or Tampa could find themselves in trouble with the playoffs. I don't think Florida necessarily does, but without Barkov, it is possible. And so, because the Atlantic's so good, if you have any kind of a fall off, you could find yourself out of the playoffs. Boston, yeah, definitely not rebuild with optimism because they don't have the amount of young stars they need yet. Although Hagens looks like he's going to be a good one. I'm going to put them under a question mark because Don Sweeney has this idea they're going to get back to the playoffs. I've seen some Bruins fans arguing they're going to get back into the playoff hunt at the very least. We'll see. But yeah, Boston. I'm kind of on the fence with Boston, and so I'll put them next to the question marks just because chickening out's fun. The Islanders, definitely not up and coming. I don't know. Chokers doesn't really work for them either because they didn't make the playoffs this past season. But they've made the playoffs recently enough that I can't have them next to endless frustration either. I guess it's question marks for the Islanders too, isn't it? I guess it kind of has to be. And there are Islander fans that think they're going to be back in the hunt as well. That, they could be back because injuries. So they don't have the injury problems. I always kind of feel bad at this time of year because there will always be the fan base. So like, see, we just had injury problems last year. And then the new season shows up and then a lot of the same injuries show up or new injuries show up. Same players getting injured kind of thing. So yeah, I've learned, and I think this is from the years as a Canuck fan, not to assume that the injury issues won't just show up every year. I go into every year assuming that the defense core in Vancouver is going to be absolutely decimated by injuries just because it's happened so many times over my lifetime watching hockey. Minnesota. I mean, according to the Kaprizov signing, that means they're never winning anything ever again, which is wild. And not saying that because I'm holding a Minnesota Wild logo. I apologize. Just forget I ever said it. But I don't view it that way because superstar players do win Stanley Cups. Sometimes they win them before they get the big payday. Sometimes they win them after the big payday. It's definitely a video topic worthy of discussion and thrown on a whiteboard at some point. So for Minnesota, you know what? I'm going to put Minnesota next to endless frustration because they haven't made it out of the first round since 2015. At times it's been a state issue, and it's not just hockey related. If you're a Vikings fan, Twins fan, for instance. But yeah, the Minnesota Wild, I do feel like it's been endless frustration, even though they've been a playoff team a lot. And I think the frustrating part is I keep seeing people talk about how mediocre the team is, but they're not. They've had plenty of times over the last 6-7 years when I've been covering things on this channel on the daily that just look like Minnesota could win the division. Minnesota looks like a contender. Minnesota goes on long winning streaks. Everything looks really good. And then it just falls apart. And I don't think that's necessarily that the team's mediocre. I think the team is good. It's just they haven't figured out how to win those games that matter come playoff time yet. So endless frustration it is. Although, having said it out loud, I feel like chokers might work. Does chokers work better for Minnesota? I'm gonna put them up here. Yeah, I think that works a little better. So endless frustrations: Philly, Detroit, and Buffalo. So there you go. All right, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.